Got a lot to cover in today's video. We're going to further break down who we think Hero 31 is and when they should be likely to come out. But first, there was slight alterations to the patch we reported on yesterday. That insane Mccree Buff that I told you about, well, they reined it back a little bit. It was 0.4 on the PTR, now 0.42. As you can tell, it's still pretty darn fast. And even though a lot of people disagree with me on the visual recoil point, I find it a lot easier to track without having to compensate for the old massive kick, making Mccree a lot more user-friendly while also adding more DPS. And if you can tell in the background, there's also been a buff to the practice range. The bots are now smaller. That's adorable. The other change was to Brigitte, which if you caught it in the flurry of news that came in yesterday, Blizzard actually snuck this right into the live patch, and I assume they just went to work on it immediately when this story started to break, because it's already fixed, where there's no longer that crazy stacking effect to Brigitte's rally armor, which, let's just face it, it's a huge nerf. She used to have superpowers with Brig Rally, where it was blocking way more damage when Rally was active, multiplying the effect of the damage mitigation. Now Rally is going to be a lot worse. Also, there's another nerf in here that's labeled as a bug fix. Brigitte's Rally now can be blocked by barriers, just like Lucio's Sound Barrier and Transcendence and other ultimates like that, which adds some interplay. In the Goat's Mirror, Reinhardt could put his shield in between Transcendence and a Grav, for example, to isolate targets. That's a really high-level trick. You could also imagine characters like Orisa or Winston possibly placing a barrier perfectly to split off a character from Rally, but I think Rally's just so much weaker now that might not even be that big of a deal. We'll have to find out. How hilarious would it be if all this time this was the secret to killing Goat's meta, a bug nobody knew about? Oh god, how funny would that be? That's it for the patch. Now let's get into talking about Hero 31. Before the short story that was dropped yesterday, you might have started to theorize that some of the other candidates that have been in public view visibly could be easy contenders. The Storm Rising Omnic Predator guy very clearly looks like he's going to be a hero soon. In an interview recently, Jeff joked about Mama Hong. Junker Queen's too cool to not eventually be utilized. Been hinted forever. Last year's BlizzCon introduced us to Echo, who we know is going to be a hero eventually, and to be honest, all of these could be heroes in development. They maybe have shown us all of them, because also a year ago, Blizzard did admit that they had 6 heroes in development at the time, and for all we know, they have more now. I'm unsure how they're going to handle that. It seems weird to me for Blizzard to be stocking heroes for a rainy day and seemingly pull more out of nowhere, but if we combine that with the leaks from Kotaku expecting Overwatch 2 to be announced at BlizzCon, well, a hero drop seems to line up with that. That's what you would need more heroes for if a sequel or expansion came out. So the possibilities seem kind of wide right now. There's all kinds of options, and as Jeff has recently noted in an interview, this year, the events are going to be changing when they come, okay? Now that could just be as simple as the dates change, or it could mean they're planning a different type of release schedule for this entire year. We don't really know the scale of how different this is going to be. And I mention that because we're in this sort of limbo period of Overwatch potentially jumping up to a sequel or expansion, or staying the course with their normal release schedule. For now, I would say it's safe to say that we can just look back to how they've done things in years past, but sort of have a thought in the back of our mind that Jeff did say the events might change. So does that change these release dates as well? Probably. If you look to the years past of the dates of the announcement shown on the left and the dates of the release shown on the right, middle or late July typically is it. Ana, Doomfist, and Wrecking Ball all came out in July, but also as well, all of them had a different relationship to how long they were on the PTR and how well in advance they were announced. Wrecking Ball, because he was such a wacky character with new interactions, nearly had a month on the PTR, whereas Ana just had a week. So even if nothing changes, we can easily expect the new hero to at least be announced and put onto the PTR by the end of this month or early next. But there's a chance that gets pushed up, I think, because the Summer Games event has been hinted to also potentially be pushing up. Now let's get into talking a bit more about Mauga. In our previous video, I detailed how the story really crafted what he was all about, what his likely abilities would be. He's got a shield, dual-wielding machine guns. His weapons likely overheat because he needs coolant in a pack strapped to his back. He has a hothead personality and seems to get blinded with rage and also inspire the same type of frenzy with those fighting alongside him. That alone, I think, is enough clues to be like, well, he's just fully fleshed out as a character. He's Hero 31, no doubt in my mind. But I think there's even more clues in the story as well. And also is keeping in line with what it looks like Blizzard is doing, generally speaking, seeing with Overwatch characters in the lore. I'll remind you that when Baptiste got announced with his story drop, it seemed extremely clear that the character we were going to get was going to be a Talon healer. This video linked on screen was made before we had any clue what Baptiste even looked like, and I'm proud to say we pretty much guessed at all of his abilities. Now, I don't know if I'll be as lucky this time with getting Mauga right, but it seems like the hints are pretty much on the nose. So much so that this image of a Talon soldier we used is precisely the template that Baptiste had. He, in fact, is supposed to be one of these stormtrooper type looking guys working for Talon. In the same way, you guys were really quick to point out to us on Twitter and in the comments section that the way that Mauga is described is exactly like a heavy assault who also is one of the major Talon soldiers. This image here was incredibly deceptive because in the short story, it was cropped so I couldn't even see his guns. We only saw his heavy armor, which is like, okay, he's kind of like Reinhardt, but get a wider view, and it's like, oh yeah, he's exactly a heavy assault. Very clearly are they sort of finishing off Overwatch heroes that we can put a name to and get some more character out of the Talon force. It's been a long time coming that Overwatch has had like a proper cast of villains to create conflict in the narrative. It just sort of felt like just about everybody's a good guy and there's a couple bad guys, like they're a ragtag group, not really justifying why Overwatch had to crumble in the first place, because everything seemed like it should have been peachy, right? Well, not really, because the short story that was dropped yesterday, What You Left Behind, was fantastic on multiple levels because of how it juggled so many different themes to push forward the story. Normally, we get little dribs and drabs of motivations and information about characters, and it pretty much amounts to nothing. Whereas in this story, it is jam-packed with complex motivations, story arcs, fleshing out the morality in Overwatch to be a lot more gray. I'll get more into that with examples here in a minute, but let's remember, they're able to flex this muscle because a year ago, they hired critically acclaimed writer Alyssa Wong, who is the writer of this very story. I assume workshopping the way they were going to handle their lore, along with this very story, is what they've been working on for the past year, and probably even more to come. I mean, I hope she gets to write a novel, because her handling of this IP is just second to none over there. Give her the keys to the castle, because she's actually amazing. But anyway, that trajectory of how long they've been building up to this point and how big of a step it is for Overwatch to actually give us lore indicates to me more credence that like definitely Mauga is a character, because this is where Overwatch is trying to go now, right? We actually know something that's happening in the present day. That's one of the biggest complaints about the story in Overwatch. It never goes anywhere. Where the Baptiste story, yes, it had a lot of flashbacks to sort of give context to the experiences and internal conflicts these characters are going through, but it also makes a big jump into the present. Now, I'm going to talk more about the specific themes handled in the story, and I'll do my best to tiptoe around spoilers. I've already done so already, speaking a lot about the goals of what it accomplishes, and I think even if you haven't read it, you'll still be able to appreciate these things and hopefully not have any of the plot spoiled for you, so it's less enjoyable. But the reason why I'm so excited about where they're taking the story now is because they're very clearly trying to make everything morally gray. From front to back, everything is now treated morally gray, which I don't think was the case in previous years. It was very clearly that Overwatch was just objectively good, and yeah, we knew Blackwatch kind of caused their downfall and they were evil, but that still sort of absolves Overwatch of responsibility for that evil, right? Whereas in this story, well, we've got evil characters saving lives. We have good characters working for evil organizations. We have a character who was supposed to be a good guy working for Overwatch, but turned out to be a rat, only working for their own self-interest. This is a much more mature way to handle this, which would make it a shock to me if they put all the work in order to move the narrative into so much more of a complex place than not introduce Mauga, who's kind of the poster boy for this new thematic exploration Overwatch is going on, into the game. Like, there's just no way. It's such a waste of potential. And here's some examples to kind of further give you a picture of what I mean. Overwatch as an organization is mentioned multiple times in the short story, but never have we seen it be undermined and questioned to the level that it's being here. Not Blackwatch, not the boogeyman inside Overwatch, but just the overall mainstream Justice League version of it. Baptiste talks about growing up as a teenager, believing in the shining heroes on TV and recruitment posters. And he wanted to be like that, but Overwatch never came to Haiti. So Baptiste, being a good guy, got his hands dirty, doing the hard work to make a difference by joining the organizations that he could in front of him, which eventually led him to working for Talon, and horrific actions came after that. There's some awesome plot points of how he escaped and his relationship with them still. but Baptiste is kind of skeptical of Overwatch because in his world, Overwatch is sort of a false promise. It's all aesthetic, hope, and wonder, but what good is all that positive emotion if there's work to be done and they're nowhere to be found? I mean, at some point, it almost sounds like we're talking about ranked mode right now. Promises unfulfilled. But there's a point in the story where there's a girl at a hospital waiting room who drew the Overwatch symbol on her bag, and when Baptiste looks at it, she notices and she tries to hide it from him because he's obviously judgmental and skeptical of it. People want to believe in Overwatch, but it's also kind of an embarrassment to some degree. And the last point I want to make, this straight up is a spoiler, but we're at the end of the video, so if you don't want to know what happens in the last couple lines of the story, it's the last point I'm going to make, so click away now if you have to. But we find out by the end that Baptiste has connections to Sombra, which makes sense. She works with Talon, but she's the most morally gray out of all the characters in Overwatch. She sort of plays both sides. And here he's asking Sombra to help him find Mercy and protect her, really, because Talon is coming after them. Because now, in 2019, 3 years after we saw that Recall trailer, remember that? Where Winston is trying to bring the gang back together? Well, now we're finally seeing what happens 3 days later from that. The story went super wide, showing us everything in between, some stuff in the past, and now we know where the game's set and what's going on moving forward. Can Sombra actually be trusted? I mean, Baptiste trusts her, but where does that really put Baptiste in this situation? He's not in either camp, and he spoke about this a lot in the story as well, where he certainly isn't Talon because he is disgusted by killing civilians and destroying cities, but he also wasn't ever really accepted into Overwatch or had a chance to join that crowd either. So are Baptiste and Sombra sort of the morally gray middlemen in this, but also kind of heroes in their own way? Really awesome place where the story is going in Overwatch. Overwatch going big in 2019. I've been saying that so much, I should start selling t-shirts for that, but I hope you enjoyed this video and see where I'm coming from. There's no way that they're putting this much work into moving the story in this direction and then releasing a completely unrelated hero like the Junker Queen or something. It just wouldn't make sense. It's gotta be MAGA, and I couldn't be more pleased. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for your Overwatch. See you guys next time.